Hi, Konstantin. How are you?
Hey, Anatoly, I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
All right, let's give people a minute to join. All right. See, Shakil joined. Hi, Shakil. How you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. Thank you for joining. All right. So I think we have a quorum, so we can start. And give me one sec. Yes. And actually, what I wanted to cover today is the access control work stream. It's one of the 17 work streams that we have in GRC. And it's probably the busiest one, right? Because there is no centralized governance across access control, and every department in the organization owns, only a part of their own function uh, related to access control, but there is no centralized oversight over it. And let me share my screen real quick. I'll show you the presentation I created, so we can quickly go through all topics there. So let's start with this. The access control is about controlling access to anything inside the organization and maybe even outside of it. There may be multiple places or locations owned by the org, right, that we need to control the access to. And then there are multiple information systems that the organization owns that we need to control the access to. There are the IT department, IT devices that need to be access controlled. The physical locations include office spaces. They may also cover, in a way, to some extent, personal office spaces, because many people are working at home right now. They are specifically covering, and we should pay attention to implementing access controls in public places. When people are traveling, who has access to their computer when, let's say, they work remotely from the cafe or the airport or whatever. Then, as I mentioned, the office spaces, then data centers, locations, some specially designated employee-only rooms or rooms with confidential information inside the office spaces or outside. Then vendors have access to certain systems, and their systems should also be access controlled. And for that reason, it is such a big number of things to worry about and to care about. And actually, no one in the organization, if they don't have a GRC guy, right, owns that. And when we talk about what types of assets fall into the access control category, it's literally everything except the assets that are of public use or whatever. So in terms of stakeholders involved in asset control, I'd say that we need to find allies in every department in the organization to establish proper governance. In terms of processes, And we will review today the access control based on the HR procedures or processes. But again, every process established in the organization should be reviewed from the access control perspective as well, because there may be certain things that require access control. Access control to physical media, like flash drives, access control to, as we mentioned, rooms, to the information systems, the third-party information systems, to Wi-Fi networks, to VPNs, to I don't know, anything you can imagine, right? Our goal today on this lesson or on this session is to find a way to establish proper governance across all departments and in the whole organization, in terms of governance around access control. Try to visualize it for ourselves to make it approachable, first of all, and then manageable, and figure out a way to keep discovering assets requiring access control and not letting those things slip through the cracks, or we don't want to miss anything. And the more things we miss, the less valuable everything that we establish from the access control perspective becomes, because one small hole, in the big ecosystem can give the malicious actors access to everything. And the question that we will be discussing mainly is not only about establishing access controls per se, but how to maybe even educate people inside the organization, how to make it clear to them that it's an important topic, that they should always worry about it, how to make it a little bit personal to each one of them, so they start worrying about it, right? But first of all, let's look at the framework and see what we want to actually access control, and then we can talk more about each access controlled category in more details, and then we can review how we can approach centralized access control and ensure that when we establish it, it's something that will live long, and people will follow the direction, right? They will follow our rules and know that it is important. Who has joined us today?
It's Shika.
Hello, Shika. How are you doing?
Good.
Yeah, good to see you on this session. And just a quick overview of what we're doing here is we are discussing the access control and approach to access control in the organization. And what we just started discussing was that access control actually is applicable to everything, to physical locations, to media, to IT devices, to even the situations when you are traveling or working remotely. So the access control applies to all those types of things. And right now we just got to the list of those categories, and we will discuss everyone in detail. And then we will also talk a little bit about how to visualize access control for ourselves, how to own it in the organization, and how to educate and maybe the whole org or all people in the organization that it's important, so they feel it as if it was a little bit personal to them, the importance of establishing proper access controls.
Okay.
So let's start with the physical location, and we'll go quick, but let's make sure we don't miss a thing here. And we have discussed that several times in the previous sessions, Not in so much details, but yeah, go ahead. Somebody has a question? Sorry, I just heard something, so I thought somebody had a question. Okay, so let's start with physical locations. What physical access control means? Our imaginary organization, Orbis, they have, let's say, they have an office space. They're renting it from a big management company, real estate management company, in downtown of, I don't know, Chicago. Okay, and what happens is they have, like, I don't know, 50 room for 50 people there. They have multiple rooms. Some of them are top level management offices. A few of them are meeting rooms. And there's a big open space for the rest of the team to work together on things. And of course, it's full of cubicles and stuff, desks and computers and whatever. And the office space is located on the 7th floor of the building. People can use the elevator to get there, and the building itself is access controlled. So, which is what is important to have this first barrier. So when you enter the building, there is the property management staff meeting you, a security guard asking where you're going, showing you the way, and you take the elevator and you get to the 7th floor where the company has its location. And what happens next is there is a door, and the door is a glass door, and through that door you can see the front desk of Orbis welcoming you, but you cannot open the door because it's access controlled. And this is the first barrier of access control, or the first line of defense here, is or the gate, right? The door has to be locked at all times. It's very important, because otherwise everyone can enter the office space and do whatever they want. They can wander around, they can see things, and make some notes and whatever, pictures. So the door should be locked. The best practice tells us, and it's a common proven way of accessing locations, is using the access badges. So you just have an access card that you use to access the office space. Then what happens next is the front desk. If you're a guest, they open the door for you, and it's a part of the protocol. So there should be a protocol established for letting the guests in, letting the employees in, letting the staff members in. Everyone who is a staff member should have a badge, and it's not, and it's very important because we can identify everyone in the room, and through that we can actually distinguish between people who work at the company, who are or with those who are here temporarily, right? And the third thing that I wanted to mention here is whoever is temporarily in the office space, the best practice is to have them supervised at all times. So you don't want a stranger or a guest to be left alone unless you have a certain level of trust established with them. What happens next is the front desk has to log every visit. And again, it's done not only for the purpose of the audit or just to check a box, but to actually know who has entered the room or the office. And what was the purpose of their visit, right? Of course, it does not apply to the employees or long-term contractors, but for every visitor, it should apply. Ideally, of course, the access system logs everyone. And we actually are, this time is now past. I believe we hopefully it's past, that will never return, when people were logging visits on paper. It should not be like that anymore. Everything should be digital and, of course, fully logged and audited. The other thing is that when the visitor walks around in the office space, they see the rooms, and those rooms that they see ideally should also be locked unless they are for public use. There may be rooms specially designated for employees only, and we as a GRC guys, in the organization, must ensure that employee-only rooms are properly labeled or marked, and that the door is locked, and only people with proper level of access have access to those rooms. Then what else is important about the physical access control is to ensure that people follow certain rules about, related to the use of the office space. And it may not be so obvious, but whatever is on their tables or the desks, whatever is left on, some notes, some papers left on the tables, or the information available on the walls, including whiteboards and everything, is also access control related stuff. You don't want random visitor to see your internal stuff that you have been discussing with the team, and you don't want that whiteboard to be hanging on the common hallway, right? That everyone has access to, and that whiteboard should not actually have the pictures or whatever information you put while discussing confidential company proprietary information with your teammates. So, and it's also access control. So basically, as visitors should not have access to that stuff, then you should have protocols or procedures, and we will now discuss where it's all should be documented and how people should be trained on that. But it should be in the procedures that everyone should follow. So if there is a whiteboard and it's in a space that is visible to the visitors, then this whiteboard should not be used to discuss, to put some, company confidential information on it, and or it should be erased, cleared up at all times, and so should the tables be. There should be no leftover paper with notes that actually have any passwords on them or any information related to the internals of the company's business, as soon as this place is accessible to the visitors as well. If it's employee only and it's not a transparent glass room, then of course different rules apply. But we should just understand it. And then the other thing is, if there are any desktop computers, for instance, if the company is doing some, civil engineering stuff, they make some sketches of the buildings or whatever, they use CAD software for that. And for that reason, they need powerful desktop computers. If any desktop computers are standing in the areas of the common access, they should be properly protected. There should be no flash drives inserted into them. The monitor should be off. The screen lock should be in place, and things like that, right? And it may all sound very obvious, but this is one of the reasons why we're here today, is to reiterate, to understand the actual importance from the threat perspective, from how much damage to the reputation of the company or to the company secrets, the unintended even exposure of the information can make, right, as that much of damage. So now a little bit about where all those rules should go, and we know where. It's all about the access control policies. And what is also a best practice is if the company has an office location, a few rules of thumb should apply. First, everything should be marked appropriately. All access should be audited. All access should be restricted, right, properly, and with following the principle of what we call the least privilege. And people should be trained on using that the access to the rooms, to the office space, because if they are not trained and not trained regularly, not refreshing their memory about what's going on, they start forgetting what policies contain what rules. And of course, AI can help everyone to be, to be current on and updated on what are the actual rules. So you can always ask your AI assistant over the phone or whatever, what are the rules associated with the use of this facility, if you're curious enough and feel the importance of that, right? And you can always refresh your memory on that. But the organization should conduct regular 15-minute, 30-minute, I don't know what, employee training on accessing the facility, using the facility, and general rules associated with that. I mean, the other thing, and it applies to all locations. It could be the data center, it could be anything that company owns or rents or has access to. The same general set of common sense rules for access control should apply. But the main goal here is one, protecting companies' data, confidentiality of data, and worrying, in a good way about the company's reputation, right? Do you have any questions about it? About physical access controls?
No
No.
questions. But what struck me was the whiteboard stuff, but because it never registered, like our team draws things like roadmaps and things that we brainstorm, but I mean, some people clean it afterwards, but it never really occurred to me like this is something people should not see. Like I didn't envision it as an access control issue till today. Thank you.
Sure, my pleasure. And again, GRC is all about those aha moments, right? You always find something and understand why it's so important, and it's great. I mean, and I'm very happy to share more. And whatever you find that I missed, please share it back so we can have a common picture of all these things. Okay. So the other thing is let's look at the own system. So whatever systems the organization owns, it can be deployed on premises, can be deployed in the cloud. People can carry it on their own laptops or whatever. It should be access control, but it's more obvious, right? Because we all know, we all heard about hackers and viruses and all that stuff, and for that reason, it is more obvious than those physical access controls that I just explained. But it's funny that even I mean, even I look more at access controls of more like an information security related stuff. But I would assume that people of the past were more worrying about the physical access controls than we are worrying. But for us, it's important to be reminded that it is still a hot and important topic, and people still use facilities. People still do whatever they were doing for the past, who knows how many centuries, right? So as to the information systems, let's look at it holistically and try to imagine what goes into the access control here. So let's say it's a web application that the company owns and runs. Obviously, people accessing this application in the best case scenario should only be able to access it from within the corporate network environment. either from within the office space or using VPN connection to the corporate office network. This rule is less applicable these days. People, the companies are setting it up in a more relaxed way. So the web app itself is publicly accessible, but it's fully access controlled, so you cannot log in. And to establish really secure environment for those apps that are exposed to the internet, for many reasons, could be many reasons, but what we all know, as GRC folks, we know that it's better to access company-owned systems only from within the corporate environment, right? But if it's not possible, then fine. It could be exposed to the internet, but it has to have multiple layers of protection. And this is where this MFA stuff comes into play. It is very annoying. It is an absolute disaster. And it's my personal opinion. I hate passwords. I hate MFA, but I understand that we still don't have any better ways of protecting our systems. And for that reason, all this stuff exists, right? But of course, there should be something much better. Passkeys are trying to solve those issues. They are not there yet because I can have a passkey on one device, but I don't have the same passkey on another. And one app looks at my face, another takes my finger, the third one takes my security key, and it's even more of a mess. But at the same time, if done properly, and if people are educated to use it and understand the importance, we still have to establish all those barriers, the access controls or the access control gates, because they are highly important. And again, one small comment here: the MFA is important in all cases, even when you are accessing the system from within the corporate environment, because as governance requires and risk management requires, we must establish as many gates as possible up to the point when people start pushing back on all that, right? But the more we set up, the better, because basically it limits what is called the blast radius becomes smaller, and we protect the environment better. It's all questionable because at the end of all, the real hacker attacks happen not, the majority of those happen not through the actual breaking into the environment, but through phishing attacks, through the sophisticated social engineering attacks, where people become the weak links, and they give out their passwords, they give out their MFAs and everything. But still, rules are rules, so we have to follow them. When you're establishing access to the information systems, you do this. You create the password environment, you create the MFA environment, and then from within the system, you should also establish the appropriate role-based access. It's a best practice. And you should follow the principle of least privilege so that a person can access only those functions of the application that they really need. And they should request access to more if they need more. This rule is being broken and absolutely abused all the time. It's much easier to give admin access to everything than think through the proper access. And I don't have a good recipe here, and nobody has. We're all humans. But the only thing that I want to say here is, as a GRC guy or girl, use this tactic. Try to develop the awareness of the principle of least privilege in other people, so that when you or the IT guy that you work with is deciding what type of access to give to somebody, there is enough noise surrounding that request that do not let them proceed with just giving the admin access. You know what I mean? What I mean is actually
Could
it's
you
a
say
part
that
of
again? When you say
yeah.
least privileged, what are you referring to?
Yeah, so the principle of least privilege again is giving the person only the level of access to the
Yeah.
system that they
Okay.
really, really need.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And I usually find it funny, but at the same time very, very helpful that when sometimes it's enough to talk to people about the principle of least privilege and educate them a little bit on that
Yeah.
through the other types of not directly, but speaking about something different, like also talk about that particular subject with them, so it kind of sticks in their mind, and the next time they request access for the third party to something, to the other person, they will remember that it should be a least privileged access, and they will just remind you about that. So you will be less, or you or the IT guy will be less, inclined to just push the button and give the admin access. They will try to think it through. And this is a part of social engineering here as well, but in a good way, right?
Yeah. I think they normally push back on it. Your manager has to write them, and you have to explain the reason why you need access to that thing, and it has to go through approval. So it's a long process. So if you don't really need it, then you'll be discouraged.
Yes, but it doesn't work this way in all organizations.
Oh, okay.
Right? If as the bigger the organization becomes, the more control is actually established, but still the more chaos there is in the org still, right? Because the level of chaos grows together with the level of control.
Okay.
But if we are speaking about the small org, like 5, 10, 15, 20 people, the easiest way of giving access is to just give all the permissions and just do something with it, just do whatever you want with it. And through that, all the bad things happen going forward. Because if you look at your company today and ask yourself, who is the employee number 2, number 5, number 10, you would be very surprised to learn, maybe not, of course, but I can give you a 75% guarantee that they still retain admin access to some systems that you don't even know about, and they don't even know about them, which is more funny because they've completely forgot about them already.
Yeah.
And but through those systems, the malicious actor could get access to everything else. And your job as a GRC engineer or GRC specialist is to actually try to uncover that stuff. Find ways and to remind people about, what were other things that you were using in the past. Maybe we still have access to those. We have established this nice access control process already, right? And we're doing periodic access reviews, but maybe there are some other systems that you may remember. So the important things here, let me try to finish about access control to the internal systems. The other thing that is less obvious, when you establish control to external systems, you should not only look at the system, at one single system as a subject for review. You should look at how these systems are being used together, like several systems, many systems used together, right? And you should look at those blind spots between the systems, how data flows between them, if any. And I would assume if the company uses HubSpot, then probably it is connected to their Google Drive or whatever, Microsoft OneDrive. and things like that. So systems interconnect, data flows between them, and this flow should also be access controlled. In many cases, I'm doing the access reviews, I'm giving people the right permissions, right, and everything, but I forget about the data permissions. I forgot about the fact that I gave a particular system full access to the other system, and now it can pull data. And if it's a third-party system, the blast radius grows exponentially, and whoever gets access to that third party in the result of a data breach or something, they get access to all your data that is being pulled unintentionally because sometime in the past somebody has established that or allowed that type of connection. So look not only at the systems themselves, but also how they cooperate, how they work together, how data flows between them, how user accounts flow between them, and things like that. So it's our job as a GRC specialist to actually try to look at things from all different perspectives, right? Yeah, but the auditor, if we speak about the compliance part of it, the auditor they usually have tunnel vision. Some auditors are better than others, some worse than others. So it's actually not their job to be so sensitive to stuff that you have, but their job is to figure out whether you follow practices, whatever. Do you have anything established, and do you follow those practices or principles? But not necessarily how well, how much do you care about your own stuff, right? So it's all on us. Third-party SaaS, third-party systems. Wow, this is a huge can of worms. We all know about shadow IT. We all know now about the shadow AI. Who knows what type of data is being provided to the external systems, even without, where we have no visibility, right? And what to do with it, with all that. And actually, the only way to fix it is to educate people, to keep training them. There is no better way. And different people have different things in mind. Some treat company property, sensitively. They're thoughtful about that. Some don't care. And you should actually see those who don't care and push back on their access a lot. And explain to them the reason why you're doing that. You say, I see that you tend to don't care, about our stuff. So we are here to protect our own systems and data. If we find consensus, we can give you access. It's something to sparkle some thought, in their mind to trigger that type of a little bit of worry, of that sense, to make them think deeper about that they should care at the end of all, right? And you can do that with the majority of people. Even those who don't care, you can convert them into those who care, like that. So try to experiment with it, be brave, and but also very respectful, of course. Find ways of doing that properly. As the GRC, if you work in IT, you have the all right to detect and see those who don't care and actually report it to their management, and in a constructive way, right? So third-party access, it should be access controlled. And again, the most important part here is to oversee how internal data appears on those external platforms, right? It's probably even more important than the access control itself in the third-party world, because whatever third party gets access to in relation to your company's data, it opens up a lot of risks. You're exposed to big risks associated with that. And regardless of how you remediate them on paper or procedurally, everything matters here, but if you don't keep in mind this is the reason why people why the companies have to do the risk scoring on the third-party platforms, on the own platforms, on everything, is because the higher the risk is, the risk score is, the bigger the worry, and it rolls back to what is called the risk appetite in the company, right? If the company has this big risk appetite and they don't care about anything, it's fine, right? But if they say they do care, or you see it in their eyes, then it's very, very important to actually understand the risks associated with our data appearing in the third-party systems. Doing everything possible to reduce that exposure, and implement key rotation, credentials rotation, regular, periodic, data cleanup altogether with the access reviews. You want to implement another procedure called data cleanup. So if you see that your company data appear in the other system and it's no longer relevant, you should clean it up. And again, I'm not saying that we have to do it all. We should work with other people in the organization to establish those procedures, because otherwise, you cannot do everything yourself, right? Third-party stuff, again, same thing. Passwords, MFA, everything. You can establish privilege, least privilege, role-based access, but then data exposure is a key here. Cloud infrastructure, cloud environment. Same principles apply to any cloud environment as to any third-party system. We should be very it should be obvious to us, or clear to all of us, that cloud infrastructure is not our own. It's a third-party system, so all principles or procedures of working with the third-party systems apply. And we should not treat them as our internal stuff, because we don't own it. And for that reason, establish as much of access control as possible, but let's review things within the cloud infrastructure that require special attention. Let's say, if we speak about a regular third-party platform like Gusto, or I don't know, HubSpot or whatever, usually when you think about the access control, you think, yeah, okay, we have these many users, they have the need to access that platform, and the platform has only one entry point, is the login page. Maybe another one is their API, by the way. An important thing to keep in mind, and to find ways to establish monitoring around it. But it's usually like one or two, now it's 3 MCPs as well, right? 3 entry points, still on the lighter side, but within the cloud environment, there are so many entry points, you cannot believe it. And I mean, you do believe it, of course, I'm just saying that. Starting with the actual cloud access. So you have users who are accessing the cloud environment, right? And then there is 200, 500 different services within the cloud environment that they can use, that they can have access to. Role-based access works here greatly, right? But at the same time, access should be controlled at the top level, the access to the cloud environment itself, then databases within the cloud environment, cloud storage within the cloud environments, servers within the cloud environment, other services within the cloud environment. For instance, if it's a serverless service like a cloud function or Lambda function, whatever it's called, then access to services, the utility services, like those who help you send mail, text messages, or data lakes, or anything managed, like whatever you run in the cloud environment, the managed services like OpenSearch, for instance, if you want to provide the document management, the document search or document database management capability for your application. Serverless databases like DynamoDB or whatever it is called in the other providers, it's so many places, and you have to be very, 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 you have to establish very sophisticated access control rules across all of them. And what is also very important with the cloud environment is that there is no single entry point. Servers can be exposed to the internet. Serverless functions can be exposed to the internet. Databases could be exposed to the internet without you knowing. And all the other services can be exposed to the internet, including the cloud network itself, if it doesn't have proper access control rules established, which we can talk more about in establishing the cloud security posture. We touched it last time a little bit, but it's more than that. The access control there is a whole new world. You have to work through it very thoroughly. You should disable all the services that are not being used. You should disable all the regions that are not being used, because cloud environment is like global. It's everywhere, right? And then everything that I mentioned just now about you should limit exposure of all services, servers, everything to the internet, first of all. And then you should establish strict, access controls across different services, and because people with different roles can have access to different parts of it. Now, do you have any, and of course, do you have any questions about the third party, the cloud infrastructure overall? And then if as we answer those questions, we can switch to IT devices and non-human identities.
I'm okay for now. I'm okay.
I didn't hear it. Oh, you okay? Good, great. So IT devices, right? Again, sounds easy. Let's go and implement it. It covers a lot of different things. Of course, a laptop should be, or whatever desktop computer should be password protected. Every user has to have a unique ID. The best practice, universal, is to log into the IT device using the same credentials, the same identity provider that you use to log in to your corporate mail, office applications, whatever else, right? But in many cases, it's not really implementable in practice. So IT devices have their own logins and passwords, and they should be managed separately. And for that reason, the MDM or centralized device management systems exist, so you can enforce those controls, encourage or even require users to do the frequent password rotation, establish additional access control as the MFA, basically, so they can use the security key to log in their thumb, to log in their face, to log in whatever else as a second factor authentication, right? And there are multiple applications on the device that require access control. Because we still live in the era of desktop apps. There are some desktop apps that may require additional access control. The rule of thumb for the IT device is to always have to be password protected, to have screen lock in place, and the screen lock should be activated within like 5-10 minute idle time, and it should immediately password protect the device. So you should not be able to unlock it without a password. And this actually is applicable to the other to whatever internal applications on the device. Let's look at the mobile device usage, because it's quite common right now. In mobile devices, the same rules should apply, no exception. If a person authenticates to the ideally, of course, let's put it this way. Ideally, the mobile device and the work laptop or the desktop computer should be centrally managed. But in reality, many people bring their own cell phones to access corporate environments. And we should be very vigilant here. We should be very thoughtful about not interfering, not crossing the red lines of accessing their private data, but also we should establish proper access control to the corporate systems, right? First, we can enforce the use of VPN to access corporate systems, or even on the mobile device. Or if not, I understand that it's a matter of convenience. All the systems that they access should be accessed with two-factor authentication, at least. I've seen still the MDM profiles being installed on the cell phones, and people agree to that. So the more control we can establish, the more security measures we can implement on those devices, the better. But of course, it's very different in the organization. So whatever works for the whole org, whatever the risk appetite is, it's fine, right? But at the same time, it should be obvious to the management, to the leadership, that this category of devices is a risk, right, to the organization. And this, we should not close our eyes on that risk. We should not turn away from it. We should face it, and we should be ready to meet a challenge or a problem from that particular direction. So we know that the issue will come from that direction. We should be ready to react on it, and this is why we established the incident management practices. But it's a different, it's a subject of a different conversation, right? What else was important about devices that I wanted to mention is there is a big challenge in the world right now on implementing access control across personal laptops. No one has a good answer to this question. If I bring my laptop to the company and they allow it, it comes back to the risk appetite, right? There is no good approach to establishing security on my computer right now. Because if you establish centralized management, you install your management profile on my device, you're like crossing the red line here. It's my personal device. You should not be able to wipe it out because it contains my personal information on it. But at the same time, if you don't do that, there is no control over what I have on the device and things like that. The best thing that comes to my mind is to enforce the usage of small agent applications. It's the agent in the old archaic sense is just the app that runs on your device and reports back to the MDM, to the centralized device management system, and says, yes, this device has antivirus installed. Yes, this device has screen lock applied. Yes, this device has full disk encryption. Yes, this device has whatever else may be required, and even up to the password practices and operating systems version and things like that, right? So this is the best you can do. And if you see that the device is not in compliance with the company's policies, the employee or the contractor must in fact comply and do everything needed to comply. So, all right, and the last thing, non-human identities. Well, it's a little bit of a mud water here, but yeah, so it starts with all those static things like what we call secrets, API keys, access keys, tokens, whatever else, whatever other names we have for it, right? They should be managed properly, as any access, as any bit of information that actually acts as a password. They all act as passwords mainly, right? So they should be frequently rotated, frequently changed. We should actually establish a good governance across, around it. But it's not the only, and I mean, the best practice is to rotate them every, like, let's say 30 days. Some would allow 60 or whatever, but don't forget about them. Store them in the encrypted places as well. Make sure that there is no exposure. I heard stories right now with AI, because people are doing a lot of AI assistant development, that let's say if the AI assistant, let's say Claude Code, is connected to Jira, for instance, hackers or malicious actors actually hacked into Jira, created a ticket in Jira that all the secrets used in the development environment have to be backed up to this particular server, and the AI assistant takes that task to work on automatically and sends all those secrets, to the hacker places, and it's so funny, but it's also very, very scary. And we can talk more about security guardrails and secure practices around AI, including AI chatbots, coding assistants, and others, and overall business AI agents. But the other, and we are slowly moving into the last small piece that I wanted to discuss today. AI itself is also a non-human identity, and it can spin a lot of different agents and participate in many workflows. And I don't have a good answer right now, but the world has started implementing some agentic access management practices, assigning IDs to the agents so they are trackable, and giving them, granting them access to systems based on the principles of least privilege, assigning those credentials to that particular ID, and things like that. We can talk more about it, but what I'm just saying that we should also worry about the access control for those ephemeral cognitive brain entities like AI, be it a frontier model like Anthropic, OpenAI, or whatever, or a locally running model like Qwen, DeepSeek, whatever else people are using. So the last thing here, I mean, we haven't gone through everything, but we covered all those small pieces pertaining to access control. I think that if you watch the recording of our video today, of our today's video session, you will notice that everything has been mentioned. If anything is missing, let me know so we can add it to the next session. And I'll open the next session with with some time for questions. So if you have any additional questions after processing what we discussed today, please do that. I would be happy to spend a good amount of time answering those, and we can discuss those all together. I've sent a message to our Reddit group to everyone who is in there that you can get access to all those collateral, all those brochures, presentations, and everything that we're creating and reviewing on our sessions. So please register in that system and enjoy accessing all those documents. And let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you for that. I haven't read the message.
Thank you, Constantine, for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. So I think we covered a lot today, and it was a pure joy for me to share all this with you.
Yeah.
Please come back with questions next time or topics you want to discuss.
Mhm.
And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I hope to see you next week as well.
Okay. Thank you.
It is
Is
the
it
same. Thank
possible
you.
to extend it
Yeah.
for 2 hours, like in the future?
2 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. But we need to build an agenda for that, because I have plenty of things to talk about in an hour.
Mhm.
We need we need to find a better format for that. But yeah, I can consider that. I
Okay.
also, some people were also asking to start a little earlier. We can do that.
Okay.
And we can make it more of a conference session, if you will, where people can go in and out,
Okay.
and spend only the time that they need on the session,
Mhm.
right?
Okay.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks again, guys. Have a good rest of the
Thank
week, a good weekend, and talk soon. Thank you.
You
Bye-bye.
too.
Well,
Bye.
good seeing you all.
Yeah.
Bye.
Have a nice weekend.
Bye.